Okay. So the purpose of this session is to provide information regarding the LAV solicitation. We will highlight a few key points in this solicitation. However, it is not the intent, nor is there sufficient time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY 2020 LAV solicitation and the OVW solicitation companion guide, and ensuring that a complete application is submitted. LAV program staff cannot provide any feedback to the applicants about the quality of the applicant's proposal or provide any information outside of what is presented in the solicitation. However, LAV program staff will be available throughout the period that the solicitation is open to respond to any questions about application requirements. Please feel free to send questions about the LAV solicitation to the LAV program mailbox at ovw.lav@usdoj.gov or call the main line at 202-307-6026. It will be helpful to have the LAV solicitation in front of you for a point of reference during this information session. Eligibility is mentioned on the cover of the solicitation, as well as on pages 5 through 6. Eligible applicants include private nonprofit entities, publicly funded organizations not acting in a governmental capacity, such as law schools, territorial organizations, Indian tribal governments, including Indian tribal consortia and tribal organizations. Both new and continuation applicants are being accepted. However, grantees that receive LAV funding for 36 months in FY 2018 and 2019 are not eligible to apply. Also on the cover of the solicitation, please note that applicants are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, January 29, 2020. Please refer to pages 21 to 22 of the solicitation for more information on submission and deadlines. Please note that OVW will not accept late applications, so applicants are strongly encouraged to begin submitting their applications 24 to 48 hours prior to the application deadline and carefully review the OVW policy on late submissions on pages 22 through 24 of the solicitation. OVW anticipates notifying all applicants of funding decisions by October 1, 2020. You also note on the cover of the solicitation that you must register by January 14, 2020. Registration includes several steps: obtaining a DUNS number, registering with SAM system, and registering on grants.gov. Every applicant must obtain a Data Universal Number System number and register online with System for Award Management, SAM, well before the grant deadline. There is a reason that we set a deadline of January 14th, as the process to register for DUNS number and SAM can be lengthy. If you do not have a DUNS number and or are not current in SAM system, you should begin this process as soon as possible. The registration process is not one that can be completed quickly. It can take days, and you should begin this process as soon as possible. Every year, we have a handful of applicants that did not make the deadline because they were delinquent with SAM or grants.gov registrations. If you are considering applying, a letter of intent should be submitted to OVW by January 14, 2020. A letter of intent is not mandatory. However, they are helpful to us internally in attempting to identify the potential volume of applicants that we can expect to plan accordingly for the peer review process. Page II of the solicitation includes a link to the sample of this letter. LAV applicants will be submitted through grants.gov. If you have any questions about the registration or submission process through grants.gov, please contact grants.gov customer support at 1-800-518-4726. This phone number can also be found on page II of the solicitation and on the grants.gov website. Grants.gov customer service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with exceptions of federal holidays. Page 1 of the solicitation provides feedback on the history and goals for the LAV program. The LAV grant program is intended to increase the availability of civil and criminal legal assistance needed to effectively aid adult and youth ages 11 and older, victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. by providing funds for comprehensive direct legal services to victims in legal matters relating to or arising out of abuse or violence. Comprehensive legal services should address the broad spectrum of legal issues that victims encounter and help promote economic independence for victims. In addition to representation in emergency and non-emergency protection order hearings, this includes representation in family matters, divorce, child custody or child support, consumer or housing matters, and credit restoration. Any services unrelated to the provisions of legal assistance or legal advocacy are unallowable under the LAV grant program. Examples of activities beyond direct legal services that may be supported with LAV funds include advocacy, as long as the advocate is providing services related to legal assistance. For example, safety planning, court accompaniment, and preparation for court appearances. Translation services if related to legal services. Child care directly related to legal assistance. For example, child care to enable the victim to meet with his or her attorney to go to court, and transportation related to legal services or travel to meet the lawyer or to go to court. Please note that LAV grant program funds may not be used to provide criminal defense services. Funds under this program must be used for one or more of the statutory purpose areas listed on the slide. The FY 2020 LAV grant program has 3 purpose areas. You will find this information on page 2 of the solicitation. Please review the purpose areas carefully, as project activities funded through the LAV grant program must fall under one or more of these purpose areas. You will note that purpose area number 3 states, not more than 10% of the funds awarded may be used for this purpose of pro bono legal assistance. This requirement applies to the entire amount of LAV funding appropriated for the year. This is something that OVW monitors internally. Applicants are not required to limit their proposals to 10% legal assistance, pro bono legal assistance. Information regarding the 3 OVW priority areas under the program can be found on page 2 of the solicitation. In FY 2020, OVW is interested in supporting the priority areas identified on this slide. Applications proposing activities under these priority areas will be given special consideration. OVW recognizes the need to place increased focus on sexual assault in order to address the lack of available direct legal services for survivors of sexual assault and the unique aspects of sexual assault trauma from which survivors must heal. Applicants proposing to focus 50% or more of their grant-funded activities on intimate and non-intimate partner sexual assault legal services will be given special consideration. In addition, applications that are submitted by sexual assault victim service providers or sexual assault coalitions that propose to focus 80% or more of their grant-funded activities on non-intimate partner sexual assault legal services can apply for larger awards and may be eligible for an additional 24 months of non-competitive funding. In order to be eligible to receive $800,000 to provide 80% or more non-intimate partner sexual assault legal services, must be sexual assault victim service providers as the lead applicant. The definition of a victim service provider can be found on page 3 of the solicitation. Applicants proposing to focus 50% or more grant-funded activities towards sexual assault will receive priority consideration. These applicants should articulate the specific legal needs of sexual assault survivors within the communities and how project activities would meet those needs. Applications should also reflect the applicant's specialized training and experience in legal matters specific to sexual assault. Those applying to focus on sexual assault should demonstrate a commitment to addressing sexual assault and should clearly show that the applicant has the capacity to address the priority effectively. Applicants who state an intent to address sexual assault without clear demonstration or commitment, capacity, and/or expertise to provide sexual assault legal services will not be considered. Pursuant to the LAV statute, not less than 3% of funds made available for the LAV program must be used for projects that assist adult and youth victims of domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and sexual assault on lands within the jurisdiction of an Indian tribe. Applicants proposing to assist such victims will receive special consideration in order to meet this requirement, but they must include the percentage of proposed activities that will support services to victims on tribal lands. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Please refer to the OVW Solicitation Companion Guide for additional details. Please note, applications that propose any activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may receive a deduction in points during the review process, or may be eliminated for consideration entirely. The LAV program has specific out-of-scope activities that will not be supported by this program. We have highlighted a few of these activities in this slide, but a complete list of those activities can be found on pages 3 of the solicitation. It is important to review this list thoroughly, as applications that propose activities deemed to be substantially out of scope may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration. Section B of the solicitation provides details on the federal award information. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There are no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. However, OVW may elect to make awards in the future fiscal year for applications submitted under this solicitation but not selected for FY 2020 funding, depending on the merits of the applications and the availability of funding. The grant award period for this is for 36 months, generally beginning on October 1, 2020. Award amounts will vary. This program typically makes awards for $600,000 or $800,000 for certain sexual assault-focused projects, which I will discuss in a moment. OVW estimates that it will make up to 54 awards for an estimate of $34 million. New and continuation LAV grant program applications that are proposing to provide legal services primarily to victims of domestic violence or to provide less than 80% of the project legal services to victims of sexual assault may request up to $600,000 for the entire 36-month project period. Please note that FY 2020 new and continuation LAV grant program applications submitted by sexual assault victim service providers or sexual assault coalition and that are proposing to focus 80% or more of the project's activities on legal services for victims of non-intimate partner sexual assault may request up to $800,000 for the entire 36-month project. Note, if funded at the end of 36-month award period, these grantees may be eligible to receive 24 months additional non-competitive funding to continue their projects. Awards will be made as grants. Section C of the solicitation provides additional details on eligibility. Please refer to pages 5 through 6 on program eligibility requirements. The solicitation provides definitions of eligible entities in the footnotes on these pages. This slide highlights other program eligibility requirements such as delivery of legal assistance certification and required partnerships. Please note that an applicant must include a nonprofit, non-governmental, or tribal organization with demonstrated expertise on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking, either as a lead applicant or a partner. The organization serving as a required expert on these crimes may be a larger, multi-service organization that does not solely address domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking, but has a distinct or designated division or program that focuses on serving victims of these crimes. An example of this could be a YMCA that has a distinct domestic violence shelter. An applicant without the required partnership will be removed from consideration. Please review this section of the solicitation carefully as it provides extensive details. Section D of the solicitation on submission and information begins on page 8. The complete application package is available on grants.gov or at OVW website at www.justice.gov/OVW. Applicants wishing to request a paper copy of the application materials should contact ovw.lav@usdoj.gov or by calling 202-307-6026. Applicants should anticipate that failure to submit an application that contains all of the specified elements will negatively affect the review of the application and may result in an application not being considered for funding. It is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure that a complete application is submitted by the deadline. OVW will not contact applicants for missing items. Applicants should refer to the chart on page 21 of the solicitation to ensure that all required steps and deadlines are met. Applicants should not submit documents that were not specifically asked for in the solicitation. Providing information that was not requested, such as letters of support from other organizations in your community or service area, will not increase your likelihood for an application will be selected for funding. So when in doubt, leave it out. Please carefully review the formatting and technical requirements on pages 8 through 9. Points may be deducted for applications that do not adhere to the formatting and technical requirements. Please read the entire list of requirements. Applications must include all of the required documents. Project narrative. This section must include the purpose of the application, what will be done, and who will implement the project. Please refer to pages 9 through 16 of the solicitation for complete details. The budget detail worksheet and narrative. This section must include a budget and narrative that displays a clear link to the specific project activities and the proposed budget items. The budget should not contain items that are unsupported by the project narrative. A sample budget detail worksheet is available on the OVW website. A link is provided in the solicitation on page 13. Memorandum of Understanding or Memorandum of Exemption. Please carefully review the distinction between the two and identify which is required for your organization. Please note there are additional questions in the project narrative and the MOU or MOE if an applicant is addressing sexual assault or stalking. Applications that do not include all of the 3 required components will be considered substantially incomplete and will not be considered for funding. In addition to the application being scored on 3 components, the summary data sheet and the certification letter also will be scored. Proposal abstract. Although this section will not be scored, your application should include an abstract that does not exceed 2 pages double-spaced. This section should not be a summary of past accomplishments. For the project narrative, this section should not exceed 20 pages double-spaced and must include the required 3 sections: purpose of application, what will be done, and who will implement the project. If your application is not double-spaced, reviewers will only read the equivalent of 20 pages double-spaced. The remainder of the project narrative will not be scored. Make sure that you respond to every question within this section. The budget. A budget and the budget narrative are required. The narrative can be a separate document or included in the budget together. It must also reflect 36 months of project activities. It must include funds to attend OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance in the amount of $10,000 for proposals from organizations located within the 48 contiguous states and $15,000 for organizations located within the territories, Hawaii or Alaska. Please note this amount is for the entire 36 months and not per year. Applicants may budget expenses in excess of the required training and technical assistance amount if they are aware of relevant non-OVW sponsored conferences or trainings for which they would like permission to use grant funds to support staff, staff and project partner attendance. The budget and the budget narrative will be reviewed separately from the proposed project narrative. The budget narrative must describe each line item requested in the budget and explain all costs included in the budget, including how the cost of goods and services are determined and how they will fulfill the objectives of the project. The next few slides will focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents of the financial team. The grants management financial team reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year applications that could help with expediting your review process.
So first today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. The first things we'll highlight are the items identified in the summary data sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, 2 items we would like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include this information and leave out whether or not they have met the threshold where the end date of the last fiscal year is not included. Please ensure this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet. Another item we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you must reference the additional information section that provides the required disclosure letter. We'd like to highlight that there are 4 parts of this disclosure letter that must be provided to OVW in order to comply with this requirement. The sample letter outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure, so please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item we'd like to discuss are the financial accounting practices, which assist GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 10 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant, which may delay recommendations. Some of the most common issues that we have encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they do not provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. Another example of incomplete responses include question number 3, where the applicant does not provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but basically, please make sure you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. The next slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available that should be used as you're creating the budget to be submitted with the application. Over the last year, GFMD has worked to develop a detailed webinar presentation on how to assist applicants in developing a budget to be submitted with their OVW applications. We want to help reduce any challenges you may face with the budget and make it clear what we look for when we review your budget. This webinar provides some insight as to what OVW staff considers during their review. Using the link provided, the webinar can be found under the Budget Information section on this page. Next up is the Uniform Guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR Part 200. Another resource is the Financial Guide, as well as the Program-Specific Solicitation. If you need assistance finding these resources, please contact the GFMD Help Desk. We know this is a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions about the GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact the Help Desk at 514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov.
The MOU section can be found beginning on page 15 through 16 of the solicitation. For the purposes of the solicitation, the MOU is a document containing the terms of the partnership and the roles and responsibilities between two or more parties. The MOU must be a single document and must be signed and dated by the authorized representative of each proposed partner organization during the development of the application. An applicant must include a nonprofit, non-governmental, or tribal organization with demonstrated expertise on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking, either as a lead applicant or a partner. Please note that there are additional requirements for applications addressing the sexual assault and stalking priority areas. The MOE section can be found on page 16 of the solicitation. This is a new section for FY20. This applies to applications from lead applicants that, as their mission or designated subdivision mission, provide services to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking victims. They may submit an MOE in lieu of an MOU if they demonstrate that they have the required expertise in providing services and/or legal representation for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking. If an MOE is submitted in lieu of an MOU and the applicant does not meet the criteria to submit an MOE, the application may be removed from consideration. Please note that there are additional requirements for applications addressing the sexual assault and stalking priority areas. The applicant should carefully review the requirements for both the MOU and MOE and describe how best to proceed. The applicant should not submit both documents in their application. Only one will be scored. To be eligible for an award under the LAV grant program, applicants must certify in writing that they are in compliance with statutory requirements outlined in other program eligibility requirements. Delivery of legal assistance certification section. This certification must be in a form of a letter or agency letterhead and signed electronic or type signatures do not satisfy this requirement and should be dated by the authorizing official. The signed certification letter must be uploaded in a separate attachment in grants.gov. On pages 17 through 20, provide information about additional documents that will not be scored during the review process, but they should be included in your application. Failure to include any of the information may result in your application being removed from consideration from funding. Please review this section carefully. Submission dates and times. Applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, January 29th, 2020. Applicants are strongly encouraged to begin the application submission process at least 48 hours, but no later than 24 hours before the deadline. As a reminder, all applicants must obtain a DUNS number, register online with SAM System and grants.gov. Letters of intent are optional, but should be submitted no later than January 14th. OVW's policy on duplicate applications. Please note, applicants should only submit one application per program. If an applicant submits multiple versions of an application, OVW will review the most recent version submitted. OVW offers several options for an applicant to provide advance notice of delayed applications. Applicants should thoroughly familiarize themselves with OVW's policy on late submission on pages 22 through 24. Only in rare circumstances are extensions granted. Failure to begin the registration or application submission process in sufficient time is not an acceptable reason for a late application submission. Eligible and qualifying applications will be subject to peer review and a programmatic review. Applications will be scored based on the degree to which the application responds to each section and address each element in this section. Furthermore, applications will be scored based upon the quality of the response and the level of detail provided. Each element must be addressed in the section in which it is requested. Points may be deducted if the applicant does not include the information in the appropriate section, even if it's included elsewhere within the application. Each section will be reviewed as a separate document and will be scored as such. Information regarding the review and selection process begins on page 26. Successful applications will receive OVW award notification electronically from OJP Grants Management System GMS, not grants.gov. This award notification will be sent to the individuals listed as the authorized representative and the point of contact on the SF424 for the application that was selected for funding and will include instructions on accepting the award. Recipients will be required to log in, accept any outstanding assurances and certifications on the award, designate financial points of contact, and review, sign, and accept the award. The award acceptance process involves physical signatures of the award document and terms and conditions by the authorized representative, and the scanning of the fully executed award document to OVW. There are a number of administrative and national policy requirements listed on pages 28 through 29 of the solicitation. You should review these carefully. DOJ has implemented a new policy related to grantees that will potentially have staff and volunteers interacting with any participating minor in the course or activities under the award. This requirement will be applied to all OVW award recipients as a special condition. The recipient and any subrecipient at any tier may not permit any covered individual to interact with any participating minor in the course of activities under the award, unless the recipient or subrecipient first had made a written determination of the suitability of that individual to interact with participating minors, based on current and appropriate information. More information about this award condition can be found on the website included in this presentation. Checklist. Please use the application checklist on page 30 of the solicitation. This checklist will help you ensure that all required documents are included in your application. Ensure that you included all required documents. Please make sure your point of contact listed in grants.gov is responsive to emails and alerts. Lastly, we have some tips that may improve your chances on becoming an LAV grant recipient. Please note that the following list is not a guarantee that you will be funded, but it is included as a guide to navigate you through the OVW application process. Please read the solicitation in its entirety. It is important to make sure that you do not miss out on any important information by just skimming through the solicitation and just focusing on the how to apply section. Read the solicitation and contact LAV staff or submit your inquiry in the LAV mailbox if you have any questions. Allow plenty of time to gather required information and submit well before the deadline. Although this is not required, more time will allow for any unforeseen obstacles such as power outages and natural disasters. Attend to technical details. A missing or incorrect DUNS number or an expired stamp registration are some of the reasons an application may get rejected. Applications can be rejected if files are saved inappropriately. For example, files with names that exceed the grants.gov 50-character limit or that include special characters. Please ensure that you are following the requirements with grants.gov. If you have any technical questions, please reach out to grants.gov directly for troubleshooting or feedback. It is important to keep your audience in mind and make it easy for them to read and review your application. Use the heading and the subheading titles that are in the solicitation. This will help the reviewer more easily follow the application. Also, please keep in mind the reviewer will only review the information contained in the application. Please be sure the application and responses to the program requirements and expectations are complete and clearly written. Do not assume that the reviewers are familiar with your organization, service area, or barriers to legal needs in your community. Keep the reviewer in mind when writing the application. Organization, organization, organization. I cannot stress this enough. Many applications fail to receive a high score because the reviewers cannot follow the thought process of the applicant or because parts of the application do not fit together. Treat it like a puzzle. Let the pieces properly fall into place. What are the issues in your community that you are trying to address? Is it in line with the purpose area or OVW priority area? Make your points understandable. Provide accurate and honest information, including candid accounts of problems and realistic plans to address them. If any required information or data is omitted, please explain why. Your budget should also reflect back to the proposed activities. Print out the final application before submitting it to ensure appropriate formatting and adherence to page limit requirements. Check to ensure that you included all attachments before submitting the application. Also, number your pages in your application. This will help the reviewer track and ensure you are following the solicitation formatting and instructions. Do not risk deductions and points for something as simple as formatting. Be sure to include all the necessary attachments and label them appropriately when uploading them into the system. Cross-check and double-check. Points will be taken off for those items missing that are required. Use acronyms judiciously, if at all. Remember that the reviewers are not familiar with your community and will not be familiar with the acronyms that your organization and project partners may use. For points of contact, if your name and contact information is listed as POC, please, please, please monitor your inbox. There are times that the system may reject your application and you will need to make sure you are getting those alerts. Good luck. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact our office. Now we will begin to take questions. You can either use the chat option or raise your hand on Adobe, and we can respond that way.
So we had a question about training, including use for training to go to NITA. Any training that any LAV funds used for non-OVW training are approved on a case-by-case basis. The $10,000 is the amount for 3 years. The legal assistance for victims orientation is a mandatory training. And there are other optional trainings offered to grantees throughout the course of the grant.
All right, so we have a person raising their hand. Andrea?
She might not know she can talk.
Oh, Andrea, if you have a question, you can talk. I think this is you. All right. We're going to move on.
She's on mic capability.
trying to go through the list now.
Gentry, maybe say that we're going to go through it.
So we're going to go through some of the questions that are in the chat. So bear with us with technology. Thank you.
So we had a question on whether or not the limitation on tort cases included anti-discrimination and civil rights cases. There is a statutory prohibition on LAV funds being used for any tort case. No tort cases are allowed. There was a question on how the letter of intent should be sent. Please send it as an email and in an attachment on an email. There were a few questions about immigration activities. Grant funds for LAV may be used to provide any civil legal assistance that is related to or arising out of the victimization or abuse. There was a question on why it wasn't included on a list of things that promote economic independence. That list was not intended to be all-inclusive.
And some of these questions will be, you can send us an email to our inbox, obw.lav@usdoj.gov, and we can respond to them as well. So we're not going to be able to cover everyone as we only have about 14 minutes left. Well, 13 minutes left. So we're still going to...
There was a question on being unclear on the difference between or why you would use an MOU as opposed to an MOE. For an organization that does not have the demonstrated expertise in providing services to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, they would need to partner with an organization that has that experience. An MOE is for organizations that have the experience and capacity to provide legal assistance and have the demonstrated expertise in serving victims of those crimes.
There was also a question about the service area and western edge of Metro Denver, Colorado. And the question as to whether or not it would be an issue because of the aligned metro area. You would still use the U.S. Census to determine whether or not the geographic service area is rural, but you would also, in your own description, lay out information as to why the specific area you would like to service should be considered rural.
There's a question on the stalking priority on whether that includes non-intimate partners. Yes, it would include any stalking.
Brandy has other questions.
Yeah,
What's the next question?
I'm looking at the questions on more information on the note about not funding the same entity as a lead recipient or a subrecipient on more than 2 discretionary awards. That would apply to So we're attempting to ensure that there's not duplication of efforts and that the OVW funds are distributed widely across service providers in the country. If you if you were to be selected in more than two, or be eligible for funding in more than two grant programs, there would be discretionary factors that would be considered at that time to determine which awards you would be funded under.
Right, and I wanted to add, I wouldn't let that preclude you from applying to any of the applications or solicitations that you're planning to apply to or partner. If you have specific questions or want to talk about what you think are extenuating circumstances, you can certainly give us your specific information by calling or sending it to the email box. But like Sandy said, I wouldn't hesitate to apply to all the ones that you're planning to apply for, but it is a way to ensure that the funds are spread out throughout jurisdictions in the country.
There's a question about the extent of involvement in criminal proceedings. You are allowed to be an advocate for a victim during a criminal proceeding, but you are not allowed to provide criminal defense.
I think so. And Mensa, if you could mute your phone, please. Several. Yeah.
There's a question about outreach as it relates to training. Outreach should be limited to information about your project and the types of services that your project will provide.
All right. So just about 9 minutes left. Any more questions, or anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question?
All the OBC trainings and orientations required to travel to DC.
Not all of the trainings for OVW are required to travel to DC. They could be throughout the country. So that information can be found, once you are awarded, that information will be found on ATA website. So there's a question about, to reiterate, we can apply to more than 2 OVW discretionary grants. And you're asking how would it be determined which would be awarded. So you can apply to multiple OVW discretionary grants. We have about 19. It's like will be like internally how we will make the determination who is awarded based off the 2 maximum for awarded in our office. Maureen, you want to
Yeah.
respond to
Yeah.
that?
At this point, we aren't predetermining right now which programs are going to get which would fund which applicants that come in. It's a process. When the applications come in and a solicitation closes, they all go to a peer review. So first of all, we would determine if somebody came in for, let's say, 3 programs, maybe they only scored well on one of the programs, so it wouldn't be an issue. If they happen to score in a fundable range on the 3 programs, we would look at the programs, we would see, what the, if the programs work together or somehow connected. I mean, it really is something that we're going to have to look at when we're reviewing the peer review and reviewing the applications individually. So I really can't give much more information about that. Like I said, I would just recommend that you come in and apply for all the applications that you were planning to apply for.
All right. Okay, so the address, again, the email address for our inbox is ovw.la lav@usdoj.gov. And it also can be found on our website, which is www.justice.gov/OVW. The slides will be made available on our website as well. All right, what about
For a
slides?
successful application, tell them to email us directly, to the box, and we could send them, somebody wants a successful application. If they request it.
So if you're looking for, if you're requesting a successful application, you can as well email us as well. So our inbox again, ovw.lav@usdoj.gov. Yes, the same entity can be both a legal service provider and a victim service provider. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions, but please, please, please send us an email. We're trying to work through. We do not have any samples of the memo of exemption format. Just follow, if you're looking for format, follow the questions that are asked in the solicitation. But there's no examples of the format. For the response time for emails, it will definitely be quite quickly. I can't promise 24 to 48 hours, but we will respond to you in a timely manner. No problem.
There's a question about a majority of funds being used for direct legal services, and another component of the funds being used to develop VIP services. All funding under this grant program must be used to support civil legal assistance to victims.
I'm not sure if I understand your question about naming protocols for files. Are you referring to grants.gov? Grants.gov will determine how the characters may be used when naming your files, when you're uploading them.
I think there's also direction in the solicitation about restrictions on characters that you can use. The best thing I could say is just be very clear on what the attachments are, because when we're reviewing all the documents that come in, it's really helpful if an MOU is entitled MOU,
Right.
or an abstract is entitled abstract. So really just name it what it is very clearly, and make sure you look in the solicitation, because I think there are some character restrictions.
On page 26.
On page 26.
No problem, Molly. 2 more minutes. Get those questions in. And again, we're sorry if we did not respond to every question. Our time is definitely limited. So we will post the transcripts and the presentation will be on our website. So they both will be there. Thank you for your time, Gail. There are multiple OVW sponsored trainings each year. Again, it's on a website calendar, TA calendar, but you don't have to necessarily focus on that for your application. That's something that you would focus on once you are awarded. All right, thank you, Frida, for sending your email. About a few more seconds. Any of my colleagues want to respond to any questions really quick?
Are there any last questions?
Or any last questions? I know there's some that we missed. I'm sorry, Valerie.
There are a lot that we have missed, unfortunately.
Just say if we missed a question, email it.
Yeah, so yeah. And again, once again, if you emailed, if we missed your question, please email us and we will respond. All right, so that concludes our presentation today. It is 3:30. We thank everyone so much. Good luck. Again, if you have any questions, send us an email to our inbox and visit us on the web. Thank you so much.